Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my father, Ron Paul.
So nice, what a warm welcome. And I appreciate my son coming all the way down from Bowling Green to introduce me. I'm sure he didn't say it, but I think he has planned someday to maybe participate in the political system. Who knows? But it is really great, and the reception has been so fantastic. I suspect the revolution is truly spreading. Make a comment about our music that we have. Rocky Lynn, doesn't he deserve a tremendous applause? He's been helping us out, so anytime you can help him out, that's okay with me. But it is a real delight to have a reception like this. People ask me, where do I go? Well, sometimes I go where we're called, and we were called because somebody told me there was a fantastic meetup group here in Nashville. Now, a year ago, if you would have said to me, there's a meetup group doing something, I would have said, what is a meetup group? But there are a lot of meetup groups right now. I think it's getting close to 1,000 meetup groups. The other campaigns and even the media come along and they pester me and they say, how do you do it? Who do you have organizing? Who's the expert? I tell them, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. They just spontaneously come about. But other campaigns want to emulate us and copy us, so they think if they only had enough money to hire the right person to do this organization, they too could have 1,000 meetup groups. But I told them that's not the way it works. You first have to have a message worth listening to. Essentially what I have been trying to do for a lot of years. I have never known what the outcome would be, and I have followed a personal philosophy that my job was to be well informed. If I wanted to participate, offer my services and offer the philosophy and see what happens. And at times I would be pessimistic and think that there will only be a dozen or two or more, and yet even though I was a bit reluctant to get involved here in the last 10, 12 months, let me tell you, the results have been far beyond anything I ever dreamed of. Let me tell you, there are a lot of people out there like you who already knew about it and wanted to hear the message, and there are a lot of new people joining us by leaps and bounds every single day. Is that young people like the message. Young people like the ideas of liberty. Young people like to be left alone. Well, young people like the freedom of the internet. And young people, as well as many others, like the idea of not only should the internet be free, but it should never be taxed or regulated by the government. this message of freedom is something that I so strongly believe in. I notice my shortcomings, but I've never lost confidence. I'm never reluctant to express my absolute conviction that if society is to achieve greatness and opportunity for the individual, it has to be through a free society, not through a totalitarian society. Discovery I have made during this campaign. I suspected it was true, but I've really verified what has happened since we have gotten so many to join. The groups that come together are very diverse, like was mentioned earlier by Lou. He said that we could go to San Francisco, we could be well received. We can go to Salt Lake City and be well received. And we can go to the center of the country, to Nashville, and be well received. Freedom is non-divisive. It isn't. It brings people together because it's non-confrontational. We don't want to tell people how to run their lives. We don't want to run the economy. And we don't want to tell the rest of the world what to do with their lives. First thing that I might consider if we are successful, or when we are successful, is that if I don't want to run your life, and I don't want to run the economy, and I don't want to run the world, I ought to take a pay cut. I ought to cut it at least in half because I won't have much to do. What we have today is exactly the opposite. A lot of people still think we live in a free country. They don't think we live in a police state. But just ask a property owner. Just ask somebody who has income, whether they own their property or they own their income. They don't. The government takes it. So when we have an ever-growing government in Washington that just takes so much from us, first they tax us. Then they borrow and pass on the debt to the next generation, and then they go ahead and they print money to further dilute the value of the dollars. Everything is centered in Washington. Even those who would like to survive on their own, out of self-defense, they have to go to Washington to try to recover or get rid of the regulations. Because then, what that does, it causes everybody to be competitive, fighting over a shrinking pie, and that is what's happening. The country is starting to realize the pie is getting smaller, the government is getting more intrusive, more authoritarian, and that's why people are coming to blows and there's more anger in the country. Freedom does exactly the opposite. It takes all the power and the authority away from Washington, it delivers it back to the people. Fully understood that, and they understood it well enough to put it in the Constitution. They understood something else about freedom. They knew that freedom was a single unit. It didn't come in bits and pieces. There wasn't something called personal freedom. There wasn't something else called economic freedom. And then there wasn't something else that said you can arbitrarily pick and choose on what countries you want to get involved in. They saw this as all one unit, and the purpose of the Declaration of Independence was the recognition that our life and our liberty comes from our Creator. The purpose of government was not to dictate to us, but for the limited purpose of preservation of liberty.